My name's Teresa. I'm the Chief Executive and founder of Together in the UK, and I am absolutely delighted this afternoon to be with to be interviewing Gulwali Passarlay, who came here as a child refugee from Afghanistan, who's written the most fantastic book called The Lightless Sky. It's incredibly exciting for me to meet an author that I've read, and is advocate for refugees and asylum seekers, was on Channel 4 last week or the week before, and is done all kinds of things. And I'm just going to ask Shayo to say hi.
How are you doing, guys? It's lovely to be in your presence, to actually hear these stories live in the flesh and be able to puncture through a couple sentences, a couple quotes, and try and get you to spill out some more things that you didn't spill out in the book. So yeah, we're more than happy
No pressure, brother.
we're more than happy to have you here.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
So where I thought I'd start is obviously Afghanistan is an ancient culture with a very long history. Probably British people know more about the invasion from Russia, what happened, the Taliban, the catastrophic leaving it by America and Britain and others. But I was thinking that there's so much more to it than perhaps we'd know. And this is not about the history of Afghanistan, but are there sort of 2 or 3 things you'd like people to know about your country of origin?
Brilliant. I think for me, when even writing the book, this was important to me to put not really to put the record straight, but to give a different perspective. Because Afghanistan is sadly known for the wrong reasons, in the West especially. But Afghanistan is such a unique place with a unique culture. We have delicious food. So if people listening and watching haven't tried Afghan food, go check out your nearest Afghan restaurant. You will not be disappointed. But all you have to do is you have to order like literally everything they have, not just like one dish. That wouldn't make sense. Afghan food is very, very unique and delicious. We have a mountainous country. We have landscapes. We have 34 provinces. There are about 40 million people lives in Afghanistan. We have amazing rivers. It's a country. I mean, like again, I used to have issue with nationalism, but it's a really special place, especially not least because I'm from there and I was born there and so on. But I would love for people to go and see and experience Afghanistan, experience Afghan hospitality. I know you asked for 3 things. So the mountains, the nature, the rivers, the scenery, the people, our hospitality, our music, our culture. We have, sports like there's a thing called Buskashi, which is a Central Asian sport, but also in Afghanistan, where the people on the horses, I mean, it's sad. They have this dead goats and like they try to do this sport, but it's like a very unique sport that it's done in Afghanistan. And of course, cricket, we've just been to the semi-final for the first time. Our boys learn cricket in refugee camp over in Peshawar. We're doing quite well. Yeah. So Afghanistan have this amazing history where we believe people, civilization existed there like 5,000 years ago in some parts of Afghanistan. Some of the world oldest civilization was, in places called Bactria, which is in northern Afghanistan. We have Rumi from there. We have Kabul. It's been there for the last 3,500 years. We have the Indus civilization. So Afghanistan is, like as you said, it's an ancient civilization, and I think we have offered a lot to the world, and I hope we can offer more in the future when it comes to good stuff. So yeah, I would love for people to go and see it, and I hope now people are going back, people are going and seeing it, but I hope there is an opportunity for the world to go and explore Afghanistan. It's untouched. It's anything. It's not something that people would have experienced in their lives. Afghanistan is different.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope there's a happier future to come when people think, oh, let's go on holiday to Afghanistan. It'd be wonderful. And when you're talking about cricket and things, it reminded me, of course, I've read The Kite Runner, and you have set up a kite charity, something to do with kites. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the kite?
Sure. A few years ago with my friend Nola, we set up My Bright Kite. It was a kind of a charity, CIC. We tried to help not only just, we did a lot of talks at schools and workshops to educate people about refugees and try to set up groups, young people, young children, to send gifts and letters of support to other refugees in like Jordan, other refugee camps. It was a brilliant project. We did it for 2 years, and then COVID hit, and then I had a baby. My friends had a babies, and then so things happened, and then that kind of ended. But my work continues. So it's similar work that I've been doing, advocating, campaigning, raising awareness. But we did it through, we run like lots of projects with young refugees at the time. We worked in schools and colleges, especially in the Yorkshire area, in Leeds and Bradford and so on. It was really great. So I continue to do that kind of work. Still do similar work, but it was an interesting experience to do that through like a structure. Yeah, sadly it doesn't exist anymore, but it was a productive 2 years.
It was a good time, and just for Shayo and everybody else, kite competitions, I gather, have been a huge thing of Afghan culture, and actually it's a very skillful thing, because even in how windy the UK is, it can be quite hard to fly a kite, but actually they do all kind of really technical competitions.
Yeah, it looks easy, but it's not easy. I don't have the skills, but in Kabul and a lot of other cities, people fly. The kids love it. And when I was there recently, it was amazing. And also, like, I did try. I did some documentary a few years ago with an Afghan filmmaker. It was a small, like, 10-minute documentary somewhere. I'm sure it's still on YouTube somewhere. And they made me fly a kite, and I loved it. This was somewhere in Norfolk in London. There's like a small hills there somewhere, and I was just running, going up and down these hills with the kites that I had. It was brilliant. But I have no skills or experience of flying kites. I have watched a lot of people do it, and a lot of people make it. I was at a kite festival last year or the year before. A Good Chance Theatre did this thing on Afghan anniversary or something, the fall of Kabul. They had this wonderful festival across the UK, and I attended one in Manchester. And the kids were so good, not only just flying them, but making the kites. It requires special set of skills and the special papers that you have in it. Like the whole thing is not. It looks simple, but it's not simple. So I have no idea how it works, but it was wonderful to watch.
And Shayo, have you ever flown a kite?
It's not something that I have done before, no.
Okay. So
I
maybe one.
Fun.
I would love to. I would love to.
I want to move on to the Lightless Sky, and you kindly did an interview for a blog with us, and I was quite startled by some of the things you said. You said it was a moral obligation you found to tell your story, and it didn't seem to, from what I read, it didn't seem to be a cathartic experience, a painful experience to go back to everything that happened when you were young. What gave you the courage to go there and write it and relive it?
Correct. I mean, you're right. I mean, that was my experience, not very positive of the writing process of recalling my story, because a lot of my friends just want to forget and move on. It was part of our experience and journey. It was normal. Like, sadly, a lot of my refugee friends think what happened to us is normal. It's part of life. It is what it is, and we need to move on, not be defined by that experience, which is fine. But for me, when I got the opportunity to write this book, which I didn't pursue it. I didn't have an intention to write a book. This was not in my plan of things. But when I was at university, my final year, the opportunity came along because I did a TEDx talk, and then people saw that, and then people were interested and wanted to hear more. And this was the peak of the refugee crisis in Europe. I mean, the refugee crisis has been existed in different parts of the world, but when it hit Europe with a few million people. So I thought to myself, okay, I have this chance. I can, because there are a lot of books written by non-refugees, written by academics, journalists with good intentions and to raise awareness. But I thought, it was time. We can't expect people just to write about us or speak about us. We need to speak about our own experiences. And so, I thought, because in my life, what I have learned, I take on every opportunity that comes my way. And I thought this was a good opportunity to let go. My intention was to trying to skip as much information as I can, not to share. But then Nadine, who helped me write it, she was very good in taking things out of me. And it was I used to bite my nails, and she's like, no, don't do that. Focus. It was a difficult process. It was not. We spent a month together at the end to try to pull it together at the Gladstone Library in Harden in North Wales. It was a beautiful setting, a beautiful place, but it was a difficult process to actually, I mean, there was some happy memories, but like especially writing the parts about what happened in Afghanistan, what happened to my family, the experience of living and so on. the journey was kind of interesting, back and forth. It was frustrating, but yeah, the early chapters were difficult for me to write, and then the later on it becomes a story, and it becomes a describing and narrating the experience. But yeah, and now I'm like looking back on it. Actually, I'm glad I wrote it because I get to meet you guys. I get to travel the world. I get to do exciting things. I mean, I've done like 30 countries visits. I've done like 600 talks. I've done like 1,000 interviews. It's all because of the book. So the book really provided me a platform, and I'm able to say and do it the way I want to, rather than being enforced to talk about things that are, like, I'm not interested in, or it does like so. The book has done me good in a lot of sense, but it was not something that I wanted to do, and I wish I hadn't gone through the experience. I wish I hadn't. It's not about me. It's not about what happened to me. It's what's happening to people right now that really saddens me. But then that's why I feel like it's important that I speak about this, that I share my experiences in hope that, we can create a compassionate society. I mean, if you see the Channel 4 questions I attended last week with the leaders, I asked a question which I thought was non-controversial. I asked about how could we get a deal which is better for the public. I'm a British citizen now. I won't talk me 15 years. And how could we be compassionate towards refugees also? And then I thought this was a normal question. I could have asked a controversial question, but I was like, no, let's keep it civilized. And then I got bombarded with so much hate and so much. Literally, Channel 4 has to then block their comment sections on Twitter. There were like 600 comments, 500 was miserable and mean and terrible and unnecessary and hateful and hurtful and untrue. But anyhow, so it's like we live in a strange world. I guess. I mean, I'm trying to make a difference, have an impact, but then like just the world is so polarized, and it's just like especially the debate and discussion on migration and refugees is just. I mean, just now as I'm speaking to my uncle's new apartment where this wonderful couple who decided to actually rent it to a refugee, rent it to the consul or through the consul to get the help. Like these guys could have rented this place for double of the money that they're getting through with this. But I was speaking to them, I was like, this is just so wonderful. They said, well, we felt we needed to do something. We wanted to give this, we had this apartment for whatever reason, and then we wanted to rent it, and we didn't want to do it through the private renter sector. We want to give it to the consul, to give it to somebody who really needs it. So there are literally good people out there which we don't hear about. I mean, they could have got double money for the price that they're given to my uncle. And so there are people out there who wants to do the right thing. Sorry, long answer, but I just feel, yeah.
I've got 2 or 3 observations on that. One, very, very important for you to tell the story. And there can be a narrative about white people capturing other people's stories and making money or a profit. And it's that kind of is something that we put together an anthology of migrant writings called Hear Our Stories. And it's something that I thought about. But in the end, I thought we're not going to. It's not that we're not going to make any money out of it, but everybody's name is on it. It's their stories. But being white and quite privileged, I had the networks to make it happen. So and Jon Snow endorsed your book, so you kind of had the networks through your TEDx talk or something to make it happen, as well as the courage and ability to tell your stories. That was one thing I kind of reflected on. And then the second thing that I reflect on is the untruths of the narratives around refugees. We had a blog of somebody living in a hotel, and there was a heartbreaking thing when she said, we had eggs on Sunday. Eggs was so exciting. It was like a red letter day. And then there's this narrative that we're paying for people to be in 5-star hotels. And it's awful. It's awful. But I want to see if Shayo has any reflections on everything that you said.
For sure. I was thinking about, you mentioned about people not necessarily being kind with the comments on, did you say Channel 4? Or was it?
Yeah. And they were commenting on Twitter later on, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like, I just wanted to see, like, in that mind, like in that frame of mind, when you've told your story, something that you've experienced, what what do you then have to overcome or go through mentally when you know that you've actually just expressed yourself, poured your heart out, and there's so much hate out there? You know, how do you digest that, and how do you overcome that emotionally?
To be honest, brother, I've been lucky. I have not been targeted on like online. I'm very non-controversial. I'm very careful, especially when I do interviews. As I said, I've done like 1,000 interviews, and sometimes when I do an interview with the BBC or like, it does cause a bit of controversy on social media. But people are normally very, very kind to me. They would say, and people tell me good things or positive things. I get criticized very little, which is good. But this was completely out of the blue, because I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to ask a question which will be a good question to ask and get the response. And everyone responded very positively, including the Richard Tice guy from the Reform. Everyone was like, "Oh, congratulations on your citizenship." They were very kind. They came and shook my hand afterwards. The whole thing, the whole audience clapped. And it was not problematic question. And then later on, to find out on Twitter, there's like 600 people just bashing me and saying things which are just completely, as I said, completely and was upsetting me. But then I normally try not to read comments, and sometimes when I do, I try to take the mickey out of it and trying to respond in a sarcastic way. But then there were too many comments and too many like rubbish stuff and nonsensical comments. So I thought I let it go. And I'm glad then Channel 4 called me saying, "Oh, we have blocked the comments and we want to see how you're feeling." And I thought that was quite thoughtful of them to reach out to me. So I just tried not to read the comments. And then people started retweeting it with the comments, which was terrible also, because like with the quotes, but then that helped the reach. It was almost like 1 million views. So I was like, okay, the racists can continue, retweeting it. So, but my experience in the last 10 years, I've been traveling across Britain. I've visited like 500 towns and cities, has been very positive. People has been anything but welcoming. And so when I see people on social media, I mean, this is a small percentage of society, but then the thing that upsets me is the election is coming up, and I hope to be proven right that it is a minority. The problem I have is that there are people who think by hating people like us for no reason or for whatever reason, their life will be somewhat better, and they're going to be voting for this racist party or racist individuals or people who have these, really views that are unacceptable, like towards migrants, refugees, or people of color, or people with different beliefs and so on. And this whole hotel thing, for example, me as a citizen, I'm struggling to pay bills and rents, and I see people staying in a hotel. It's a human nature. You want to blame them for your problems. You want to blame people because the media and politicians has done a very good job to indoctrinate us. Is that the word? Indoctrinate us. And it's like, come on, guys. There was a lady at Channel 4 News. She asked a question at the end about how she wants to leave Britain because there were too many migrants here and she did not feel safe. And I was like, the irony in that question. The speakers did not understood her. The speaker thought, oh, she wants to leave. They want her to stay. They thought she was an immigrant and wanting to leave. They didn't get the question. So afterwards, I went and talked to her and I said to her, she said, "No, please don't think I'm racist." She was standing there being miserable. I said, "What's the situation?" I said, "Oh, look, I'm not blaming you for anything. Let's have a conversation. Let's understand what you're saying. You were saying you feel unsafe on the street of Colchester because of people like me." She said, "No, obviously I'm not talking about you, but I live on my own and I worry if I'm on the street." And I said to her, "Look, if something is going to happen to you on the street, you will find people like me actually coming to your aid and supporting you. And ultimately, if somebody commit a criminal offense or criminal act or are mean to you, they need to be punished accordingly." So people are people, like humans are humans, but ultimately you will find refugees, migrants generally compassionate because they have seen violence, they have seen injustices, they have seen oppression. They are the least people who will oppress you. And secondly, she was saying, "Oh, if I call an ambulance, the ambulance will not come." I said, A, if it doesn't come, it's not our fault. You need to be making the government accountable. And B, if it does come, you will find people like me basically treating you. So I said to her, "I don't know what the issue is here, So I talked to her and she was just, she was brainwashed. This idea that, oh, I'm working on the street, I'm not safe because of these foreigners. And also if I call an ambulance, the ambulance will not come because of foreigners. She had completely the opposite idea of what the reality is actually. So, and no, sadly, no one actually came and talked to her. And I was the only person who talked to her and spoke to her. And I said, "Look, I said to her, I love to understand your perspectives." And so sometimes I feel like it's important that we reach out to people with these views, which doesn't have substance. It's just these racist views and views that are being caused by politicians in the media. So anyway, just an example. So ultimately,
this has actually led me to a question about whether you feel that you're out there representing the Afghani people Because I know that, say, if you become a black newsreader or something, sometimes there was a wonderful book by Musa Oksongo, I might be mispronouncing that, who wrote about when he went to boarding school when he was 11. He felt that he was representing black people, which seemed to be enormous responsibility for an 11-year-old. And I'm wondering if you feel that you're carrying the burden of representing Afghani people by always making these, and how that feels.
Not just the Afghan people. So I feel like I always felt like when I went to school, when I came to this country, I felt like I was an ambassador for Afghanistan and Afghans, and I should not do anything that would gives a bad reputation to Afghans or Afghanistan, because that would be unfair, that would be unjust. Because on my part, if I try to do whatever I can to give it a good image, try to give it a good representation. If I'm not doing that, at least I should not be harming the representation of my people or my country. That was my first thing. And secondly, I feel like this burden, not just of Afghans, but all refugees. Like I have this feeling, that responsibility. When I speak to you right now, I should not be making life difficult for refugees and asylum seekers and migrants. Whenever I'm speaking, whenever I'm doing something, my activism, my campaigning, my advocacy, my humanitarian work, I want to make sure in the back of my mind, this action that I'm doing, would this benefit people or would harm them? So if it's benefiting them, I'm going to give it a try. If it's going to harm them, like I could come out and like speak against refugees and migrants. I would be very famous. I could like make a lot of money. I could be very controversial. Like I have like lots of crazy ideas, but no, like for me, the most important thing is that what I do, my action should benefit people who are in my situation, who I was in their situation at one point. So for me, like in Ketching, when I live where I live, it's a very white area, Ketching in Northamptonshire. There was a hotel being opened for asylum seekers, and I had to fight the council. I had to literally argue with the local MP. I had to like go on the radio and stop and defend this decision. I said, this is, everybody needs to play its part. And I had this feeling that people said to me, look, Gulwali, if the people come, they commit a crime, who is going to be answerable? I said, obviously not me. They said, well, you are the one advocating. I said, well, I'm advocating. Again, humans are human. People make mistakes. People commit crimes. It doesn't mean all refugees are the same. So, no. and whenever I talk to refugees, I said, look, please guys, don't do something stupid, because it's not just about you or your nationality. It will impact everyone. It's unfortunate that people are brushed with the same brush, although like if I do something wrong, it's Gulwali who done something wrong. This should not represent my Afghan people or my community or whatever, or my refugee community or my fellow refugees or asylum seekers or migrants. If someone's do something wrong, they do something wrong as an individual. But then sadly, the media or politicians pick on that one case and use it against everyone else. So I'm always mindful of that, and I'm very careful. So I have that in the back of my mind usually when I'm speaking to the media, when I'm doing interviews, when I'm speaking.
I want to know, Shayo wants to come in on that thing about being a representative for so many people. It just seems an enormous responsibility. Shayo, do you want to add any reflections on that?
I mean, I did feel that was like a great point that you touched on, but I mean, sometimes I do think that there is no way out of it, because to be very honest, we all do it in some sense of the word. The only difference is maybe the filter of that you put over it. So for example, someone might say, oh, XYZ is Italian. Oh my God, you're Italian, you must be great at making pizza. And it might be someone that you really, care about, but the filter that you're using is something positive, right? Because it's like, if you're not racist, then that statement can go by. But if the person isn't too receptive to that statement, they might say, what makes you think I'm great at making pizza? But we have so the point I would make is, I completely understand that, being Afghan and me being black, clearly, is that it's a human trait. And, cleaning up or improving our human traits is something that as a society, I think more so we need to be aware of our traits. And it's a very good point that you touched on multiple times when you mentioned human. Like, if someone's doing something wrong, you're a bad human. They're bad black people. They're bad white people. They're bad brown people. They're bad human beings. But at the same time, they are great. Black people, they are great white people, they are great brown people. So if we started to create this notion of judging individuals for themselves, the world would be a much better place. But the chances of that happening are so, I mean, I don't mean to be pessimistic, but they're so hard to overcome that I guess we just have to, I mean, we can't give up, right? So it's just fighting to educate not only ourselves, but the next generation coming in. And you did mention a lot about the media, and the media, humans, individuals are against big corporations that are still going to push that, label everyone with the paintbrush. So with the same paintbrush. So it's like they paint everything in one color, and then we're like, me, you, and a few other people, like we have like this little sponge to try and like wipe it off, like, no, we're not all the same. And then they just come back and do it again. So it's a never ending fight. But, you know, how does that demotivate you, or what's your take on that? Because for someone like me, there are times that I probably just won't respond. I just leave it, because when you've been deprived, you've been looked at a certain way, the pain of 100, 200, 300, 400 years, depending how long your race has suffered or whatever, can aggravate the person. And someone who's not in touch with their emotions, it might lead to violence. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
how do you deal with that, you know?
I mean, to be honest, that's a really interesting summary and points and thoughts. Like for me, even I tell people, like, don't judge other refugees by my standard, because I may be making mistakes and doing things that are not right. People are people. Everyone is individual. I'm trying to do good. I hope I'm a good example for refugees and migrants and so on. But this point about, it's like, it's just demotivating and discouraging sometimes. But ultimately, it's like, I feel like we all have responsibilities individually, collectively, and we have capabilities and abilities that we need to, as I know, we have a platform, we need to use it. And I think, especially what's happening, like, for example, in Gaza, in Palestine, the situation with the genocide, like, it's like people are scared to speak about it, and it's like they don't want to lose their jobs and so on. There is like personal reputation. There's just so much, like, there's a lot wrong in the world, and I try not to focus too much on the wrongs, but then we got to be strong enough and courageous enough to speak on it, because, like, you see, you can't, like, as a father, forget about as a refugee, as a human, like, as a father, seeing children being, like, I see the limbs of children, parents carrying their limbs of their children in plastic bags. Like, how does that make you feel? And you got to have, like, for me, I want people to have concern. I want people to take that concern into action. Like, I want people to have righteous anger. Like if I think about if I'm going to be bitter and angry about all that happened to my family or to my people or whatnot, that's not going to get me anywhere in life. I have thought about that, and I thought this was not the right approach. So what I'm trying to do is trying to influence people in a positive way. I want people to be open-minded. I want people to be open-hearted. And, like, I believe I'm speaking the truth, and I want people to find that truth. It's not about, this idea of changing minds and hearts. No, I'm not in that business, changing minds and hearts, because I want people just to have that mind. I feel like people have that capacity and capabilities and abilities to actually have, their mind could be changed, but that shouldn't be my job. We had Teresa, and we had a really interesting conversation on Refugee Day. There was a lady, Angela, from the Separated Child Foundation. She asked a question about whose job it is to convince people, and also who, like, should, like, this idea of, like, should refugees be telling their stories to convince people? Is it my responsibility? Is it my job? What? And I said, look, I would love to live in a world where I don't have to convince people, where I don't have to get people to be open-minded, to be concerned, to care about suffering, to care about our fellow human beings. I want people to do that automatically, but that's not the world we're living in. And also, she said, so how much, like, this white and black, like, this white people doing things for refugees? I said, there is definitely a need for allyship. There's need for, like, you have the platform, you should be able to speak up. You should support us in, but, like, again, we had a really good conversation, like, for, like, literally half an hour, and, like, should people be speaking on our behalf? Should we be speaking on our other people's behalf? Like, whose job is who? But ultimately, we do what we can, the best as we can, trying to make the world a better place in our own ways, in our own images, and so on, to leave a legacy. But I feel like I have a friend, Jazz, who, we might talk about the Asylum Speakers. She had the podcast and the stuff, and she was writing this book of this collection of stories, and she said, what if people tell me I don't have rights to do this because I'm a white privileged person? I said, look, people could say that. That's their view. But ultimately, you have a platform. You have 106,000 following on Instagram alone. you have a voice, you've been volunteering, you've been a podcaster, you've been like all sorts of writer and things, and you've been an advocate. I think you have every right to tell people stories in their own words. You're just sharing, you're just amplifying their voices. And so we need that kind of people. We can't just say, look, so I feel like we shouldn't be in a business where we expect asylum seekers and refugees to defend themselves and to speak for themselves. But at the same time, we shouldn't be in the business where other people speak on our behalf when we are able, when we are capable of speaking for ourselves. So we got to get the balance. And, you know, like I've been to events in place, oh, these are our refugee people, and people speak on their behalf. I'm like, I want to hear from them. Like they can talk, their English is okay. Or where I've been to events where the refugees are the one like expected to speak for themselves. So it's like, how do we get that balance right, where people are not expected, there's no assumptions, and people say whatever they want to say, people do whatever they want to do, as long as it's for the good of everyone, you know? So it's like, it's a bit of a philosophical discussion, but yeah.
It's very important. It's a very important discussion. You know, how do people use their privilege to do good for others? Because that's the justification for your privilege, really. So, you know, in that conversation, I was thinking, I'm going about my day. I don't feel like I'm representing white women. I'm just me. And that's a privilege that I have. But how do I use it for the greater good? And I think we can tie ourselves up in knots, but actually, if we're doing something that creates something for the good, like you're doing, then we all have some privilege or other. And if we're using it for the greater good.
Teresa, there was a very good quote by an Aborigine activist. She said the word privilege. She said, if you come here to help me, then you are in the wrong place. But if you come here because your freedom is bound to my freedom, because you're like, there was a beautiful quote that I read many years ago, somewhere on the Quakers website or somewhere, about white privileges and how it's like this mentality that we have, when we have privileges, we want to help people, but actually it should be about how do I enhance your life in my life? How is my freedom in my, like it's bound to yours, like how we are interconnected, you know, like, rather than thinking about us and them and helping victim and like, so it was a really powerful quote. It doesn't come to mind, but I'm sure I can Google it and find it, or you can find it later on. It was an Aborigine activist. She said, if you come here to help me, then you're in the wrong place, you know. But if you think because your freedom is bound to mine or my freedom is bound to yours, then we can work together on this. Like that's how you use, you know, the idea of privileges and how to,
I think that's really good. If we can find a mutuality, then we're in a good place. But if I'm bestowing myself on you, that is not a very good place at all. Or you bestow yourself on me. But if it's a mutual thing, I'm really interested. I'm really pleased you brought up Asylum Speakers. Do you have? I haven't bought it yet. Are you on the podcast? You've spoken on it. I know you're actively promoting it.
Sure. So Asylum Speaker came about. My friend Jazz, she had something called the Worldwide Tribe before, and then she changed it to Asylum Speaker because she was doing a lot of interviews with asylum seekers, and she was going on journeys and meeting refugees and migrants, and she thought of changing. And I said, yeah, great idea. And then she also had this dilemma of like, does she have the right to speak for asylum seekers? I said, no, you're having a platform, you're amplifying their voices. She went to Libya, she went to Egypt, she talked to people. I said, you're sharing their stories. You are a podcaster, you are a writer, you are a campaigner. What you're doing is great. You're not really speaking on their behalf. So the book came about, the Asylum Speaker book, as there's 31 stories in there from the podcast, and one is mine. And also she interviewed me for the podcast, I think 2018. So we've been friends, and she's now supporting me with a lot of my talks as well. So Asylum Speakers now, it's a very empowering thing where there's asylum seekers have shared their stories in this book, but also we have speakers. So it's not just like asylum seekers, but asylum speakers that we can actually speak for us. So there's like 5-6 of us from the 31 stories who are actually actively having engagements of talks at schools and stuff. So it's brilliant. And she's helping us and supporting us with like all the logistics and stuff. So it's a brilliant project. And I know that's the way to go. She's not imposing anything on us. She's like, we are like, we have our own rights. We have our own agency, but she has helped us, provide us the platform to help us to go and do talks at schools or do workshops, do in conversation, do events and talks and whatever, and to raise awareness and be paid for it. So it's very good. Like, and also the book is really great. It was a bestseller in so many different categories when it came about. It's been 1 year anniversary, and it's been selling well. It's really a beautiful gift to give to people. It's like 31 very unique individual stories with overall theme of refugees and migration and displacement and so on. And it's brilliant. It's like stories from all over the world, and it's very it's great. So I encourage people and readers to actually check it out, the Asylum Speakers book, as well as the podcast if they're interested in listening to more podcasts.
Brilliant. And that is very inspiring. It's her work that she's found that path, and actually she's managed to get people paid for it, which is quite something too. And so I've got one thing, because I've just watched your TED Talk, and when I ask many migrants about what they find surprising or even shocking, they have told me it's how we treat teachers. And you said that you were out there, that's part of your life as an activist, campaigning for respect for teachers. Are you still there? Are you still quite shocked?
Yeah, I have a lot of love and respect and appreciation and gratitude for teachers. You know, I wouldn't be speaking to you if it weren't for teachers. I think, unfortunately, teachers are not treated well in this country. Like I've been to like Finland and other places in the world. I see the way they treat teachers, the way they pay them, the way the society treats them as a whole. I think in the UK we expect our teachers to know everything. Expect them to do like we think we treat them well. Oh, we give them holidays, we give them good. Teachers works like machines. Like I've seen teachers whenever I was in schools, like the pressure they're under, particularly when they have an upstate inspection and they have the grades, the like they have like 30 kids. I've been to private school where they have like 10 kids. It's wonderful. I've been to school where they have 35, 40 kids. Like how it's teacher does an amazing job. I think we wouldn't have no teachers, we wouldn't have no scientists, doctors or whatnot without teachers. So I think teachers are the foundation of society. They helps our children, they helps our youth. And I just think we need to not just like show gratitude to them and gratefulness, but we need to pay them well. We need to appreciate them in the right way. So I feel like, teachers are really undervalued and underappreciated in this country. So
okay, I'm going to ask you both. Have you both can you both name check a teacher who was life-changing? So just can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, Mrs. Brody, who became my friend and my mentor. I used to call her mom. There was just so many teachers: Mrs. Brody, Mrs. Reed, Mrs. Grails, a lot of ladies. Mr. Goodall, Mr. Hussein, Mr. Ahmad. Just so many amazing teachers I had at school. Mr. Ivory, Mr. Hendel, like really special school and college. Yeah, I think teachers could really, really impact and influence you in a really good way.
Sure. And Shayo, do you want to just name check just one?
I remember my English teacher, Mrs. McNeely, in year 10. She was brilliant. I went to boarding school up in Lincolnshire, and it was an area where they hadn't actually seen Black people in Lincoln itself and the village where the school was, and people be like, "Can I touch your hair?" or whatever. Anyway, a lot of teachers there were also racist as well, but she was one that saw beyond my skin color and just knew that I was a top set student, and her encouraging and believing in me actually is something I'll never forget. So shout out to Miss McNeely. And yeah, she was brilliant, and I hope my results repaid her back. But I think when I was in A levels as well, Tom Porter, I believe that was his name. He was my politics teacher in A levels. So those two were really, really good for me for sure.
Thank you. And now my last question, Gulwali, is you've already done so much. What does the future hold for you? What's next?
I sometimes think, no, I wish I wasn't doing what I'm doing. Like, just have a normal life, have a normal job, just like spend time with family and so on. But I feel like the work is too important. I think I wish there was no need for me. Like, my book has been published. Next year will be the 10th anniversary. This year, September, will be the 9th anniversary. It's still relevant. It's still selling. People are reading it. And I, in a sense, as an author, I'm great, like wonderful. But as a refugee, as a displaced person, I'm like, no, I don't want that to be relevant. I want my book I honestly want my book to become irrelevant. I want me to become irrelevant in this debate and discussion. Honestly, like I will be very happy just go and, like, I don't know, become a farmer or something. I'll go live with my family and support my mom or whatever, become a politician. I studied politics and stuff. But ultimately, we live in a world there's a need to speak up. And now we have over 100 million displaced people. We have 45 million refugees. The debate is not going away. Like in the UK, we had the discussion. We had Brexit. That was not good enough. Now we want to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. One day we want to leave the Refugee Convention. I mean, we put people in badges. We want to send people to Rwanda. like this whole debate. This week is election will be based on these issues of migration. When this is not even an issue, 30,000 asylum application a year is nothing compared to 100,000 France takes, or 700,000 Germany takes, or whatever, 300,000. Like we get small numbers. The last few years, 6,000 people coming through, vulnerable people needing protection and safety. We made it an issue of like, invasions, us and them, and like we the UKIP or the reform candidate was saying things like, oh, we need to shoot these people at the border, we need to have people who snipe. Like, so I feel like, you know, I want my future to be not in the sector of refugees and migration as such, but it's a necessity that we need to unfortunately continue with this work of humanitarian efforts to trying to change things and trying to change laws and policies. Because right now we have laws and policies where we have 110,000 people in the system who are actually not in the system, who are here, who are not even asylum seekers, because the law says that the Home Secretary needs to deport them. Deport them where? Like, we keep them in permanent limbo. So somebody needs to advocate for them. And I feel like people, especially people who lived experience, hopefully, you know, I have very few people, friends who wants to advocate, which I understand, but it got to be done. So I want to continue doing what I'm doing, trying to be useful, trying to make a difference, have an impact. I do quite a lot of work around children in care with local authorities, and like I sit on quite a few fostering panels. In a sense, I mean, glad there's a system where people are protected, children are kept safe, but it's such a shame we live in a society where very little is done to help parents manage and overcome challenges. And, you know, there's just so many people taken into care that they shouldn't be in the first place taken into care. It's not the right way of going about it in the cycle. So that's another discussion. But like for me, like I love to go back to Afghanistan. I love to become like a travel guide, just to show people Afghanistan. That would be my dream thing to do, and just spend time with my mom and my siblings and my family. But that might not happen anytime soon. But, you know, I hope things get better and things get improved. But I will continue to be a humanitarian advocate for causes which are important to me: social justice, you know, equality and freedoms, and like basically fairness. Yeah, not just refugees and migrants, but there's other issues around it. Like in the UK, we have 5 million children living in poverty. Come on, we're the sixth richest country in the world. That is not acceptable. And if I like, for me, my empathy and my caringness, and my fairness is not just for refugees or Afghans or migrants. It's for everyone. So I know it's a broad church, but if you are going to be a nice person, you're going to be nice for everyone. You can't be selective about your empathy. That's not how the world works. That would not have much of an impact in my view. Sorry, that was a long and not a helpful answer.
It sounds that you're a very driven person for very good ends, and thinking, you know, your dad being a doctor, that it's your personality and maybe something you've inherited that makes you want to do lots of good in the world. It sounds you've set yourself some very demanding things, but if we don't set ourselves demanding things, if there's no Nelson Mandela, there's no free South Africa. So we need people like you in the world. I'm going to ask Shayo if he wants to sort of say some kind of closing reflections.
Closing reflections. I won't call it reflections. I will just urge people more so to go and read your book and try and just, you know, understand what it was like, you know, as a 13-year-old boy, you know, having to go through what you had to go through. And then, you know, also being told that, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had to wait till you were 16, right? Before you could.
Well, my age was not believed. My nationality was not believed. It took me 5 years to get my refugee status. It took me 15 years to get my citizenship. It was such a system of disbelief and criminalization and dehumanization. And the sad thing is, it got a lot worse than when I was in the system.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing to touch on, and people not actually realizing that refugees are like probably 1%, you know, in the whole system. So just that belief that, you know, people who are coming here to seek asylum are here to take their jobs or whatever the case may be. You know, it's very important that individuals do their own education, but more so, that aside, just be human, man. You know, just be human. I think for me, that's just what I'm getting out of this, you know, that, you know, you can't derive joy from witnessing people's pain, you know, and I urge people to go and see the book and maybe a documentary in the future. I think that would be really, really good if you can if you can see how you can push that visual out there to really hit the message on the head, you know. But yeah.
Thank you, brother. There are a lot of good books. There are a lot of good films and documentaries out there. There's one called On Our Doorsteps, a very good documentary on our doorsteps made about Calais. There are other documentaries. There's films like Flee. There's other films on refugees and migrants. There's a film on our night journey or something. There are a lot of great films out there on refugee stories. And if people doesn't want to read or doesn't want to listen to podcasts, I should go and watch this film. So like for me, it's not just about my book and my story. I'm amplifying the voices and experiences of other people. So for me, the most important thing is that people open their minds and open their hearts and just learn and be, as you say, be human, be kind, be compassionate. Doesn't cost you anything. It'll actually make you feel better. If you're racist out there, just blaming everything on people like us, look into your life basically, and question your own motivation and so on. But ultimately, we need to be making the right people accountable who are making all of our life miserable and putting us against each other. And so yeah, definitely, I just want people to what is the word? Ignorance is not a virtue, or whatever the quote is. Like really, we have no excuse to be ignorant. There's so much information out there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. So just to finish up, do go and read The Lightless Sky. I will be buying Asylum Speakers for sure. And it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and have such an interesting conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the work that you do. Thanks for your time and efforts and dedication. I wish you guys well. And let's hope things get better. And I'm hopeful things will get better, because there are a lot of good people in the world doing good stuff. So they don't broadcast it. They don't podcast it or broadcast it out there, but there are people who are doing great work. So let's keep believing in the good of humanity.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of the week.